The Galactic Medical Council emergency beacon crackled to life in the sterile white chambers of Station Meridian. Dr. Zafira Keth, the Altarian head physician, rushed to the communication array with her 4 arms moving in practiced coordination. Her species had served as the galaxy's primary medical responders for over 3 centuries, their natural healing abilities and surgical precision unmatched by any other race. "This is Station Meridian responding to distress call. Please state your emergency," she spoke into the transmitter, her melodic voice carrying the authority of someone who had saved thousands of lives across dozens of star systems. Static filled the air for several moments before a weak, desperate voice broke through. "This is Colony Ship Harmony requesting immediate medical assistance. We have a plague outbreak. 40,000 colonists infected. Our medical bay is overwhelmed. We're losing hundreds every hour." Zephyra's large, silver eyes widened. Colony Ship Harmony was one of the newer human vessels, part of their recent expansion into the Outer Rim territories. Humans were still considered a relatively young species in galactic terms, having only achieved faster-than-light travel about 200 years ago. They were known for their determination and strange ability to adapt to almost any environment, but their medical technology remained primitive compared to the established galactic powers. "Harmony, this is Dr. Zafira Keth. What is the nature of this plague? Have you identified the pathogen?" she asked, already signaling her medical team to prepare emergency supplies. "It's unlike anything in our databases," came the reply, the voice growing weaker. "Started as respiratory symptoms, but it's affecting multiple organ systems now. We've tried every treatment protocol we know. Nothing works. The infection rate is accelerating." Zephyra felt a chill run down her spine. In her 300 years of medical practice, she had encountered nearly every known disease in the galaxy. The Altarians maintained the most comprehensive medical database in known space, constantly updated with new pathogens and treatments from across thousands of worlds. "Harmony, we're preparing a full medical response team. Transmit all available data on symptoms, progression rates, and any treatment attempts. We'll have a cure synthesized within hours of arrival," she assured them, though something about this situation troubled her. Over the next few hours, as her team analyzed the transmitted data, Zafira's concern deepened. The pathogen showed characteristics she had never seen before. It seemed to specifically target genetic markers that were common across multiple species, but its effects on humans were particularly devastating. More disturbing was how it appeared to adapt and evolve in response to treatment attempts. "Doctor," called out her assistant, a young Rigelian named Torx, "the infection vectors don't match any known natural pathogen. The way it spreads, the specific genetic targets, this appears to be engineered." Zephyra studied the data projections floating before her. The evidence was undeniable. This wasn't a natural outbreak. Someone had deliberately created this biological weapon, and they had targeted it specifically to devastate human colonies. "Prepare our fastest medical frigate," she ordered. "Full emergency protocols, and send a priority message to the Galactic Council. They need to know about this immediately." As Station Meridian's medical team rushed to launch their rescue mission, none of them noticed the encrypted communication burst that had been quietly transmitting from a hidden relay in the station's outer hull. The message traveled through a network of carefully placed relays, each one adding layers of encryption and misdirection, until it reached its final destination in a heavily shielded facility on the dark side of Croton Prime. The facility belonged to the Hegemony, a shadowy alliance of older galactic powers who viewed humanity's rapid expansion with growing alarm. Humans had colonized over 600 worlds in just 2 centuries, their populations growing at rates that concerned established civilizations. Their adaptability meant they could thrive on planets that other species found uninhabitable, and their seemingly endless curiosity drove them to explore regions of space that had remained untouched for millennia. In the depths of the Hegemony facility, General Vos Kratek of the Saurian Empire studied the incoming reports with cold satisfaction. His reptilian features remained expressionless as he reviewed the progress of their biological weapon. The plague had been in development for over a decade, carefully designed to target human genetic markers while leaving other species largely unaffected. Phase 1 is proceeding as planned, reported his chief scientist, Dr. Nexus Vale, a renegade Altarian who had been quietly recruited years ago. The pathogen is spreading through colony ship Harmony faster than their medical capabilities can respond. The Galactic Medical Council has dispatched a response team, but by the time they arrive, it will be too late. Kratek nodded slowly. And our sleeper agents in the other human colonies. Standing by. Once word spreads about the outbreak on Harmony, panic will set in across all human settlements. That's when we activate Phase 2. Multiple simultaneous outbreaks across their most populous colonies. Their primitive medical infrastructure will collapse within days. The general's cold smile revealed rows of sharp teeth. The hegemony had been planning this operation for years, carefully placing agents and biological research facilities in positions where they could strike at humanity's most vulnerable points. They had studied human psychology extensively and knew that once fear took hold, human colonies would become isolated, suspicious of outside help, and ultimately easier to conquer. Meanwhile, aboard colony ship Harmony, Captain Sarah Chen struggled to maintain order as the situation deteriorated hour by hour. The massive colony ship, designed to transport 50,000 settlers to their new home on Kepler 442b, had become a floating nightmare. Medical bay overflowed with the sick and dying, while healthy colonists huddled in sealed sections, terror evident in their eyes. "Captain, we've lost contact with sections 7 through 12. Reported her first officer, Lieutenant Commander Park. The automated systems sealed them off when contamination levels exceeded safe parameters. Chen stared at the holographic display showing her ship's status. Red warning indicators blinked across nearly 40% of the vessel. Each red zone represented hundreds of lives lost or at risk. These weren't just statistics on a screen. They were families, children, elderly couples who had invested everything in the dream of a new world. "Any word from the Galactic Medical Council?" she asked, though she could see the answer in Park's expression. "Their medical frigate is still 6 hours out. At current infection rates—" Park's voice trailed off, unable to voice what they both knew. 6 hours might as well be 6 days. Chen made a decision that went against every protocol in the colonial charter. She activated her personal communication array, one that bypassed official channels and connected directly to Earth Defense Command. "This is Colony Ship Harmony to Earth Defense. Emergency Priority Alpha. We have a biological warfare situation, requesting immediate military intervention." The response came faster than she had expected. "Harmony, this is Admiral Harrison, Earth Defense Command. Confirm your situation. Did you say biological warfare?" "Confirmed, Admiral. We have a designed pathogen targeting human genetic markers. 40,000 lives at stake. The Galactic Medical Council is responding, but it may not be enough. We need every resource available." There was a long pause before Admiral Harrison spoke again, his voice carrying a weight that Chen recognized from her own military service years ago. "Harmony, be advised. Earth Defense is implementing Protocol 7. Help is coming." Chen had never heard of Protocol 7, but something in the Admiral's tone sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't fear. It was something else entirely. Something that sounded almost like a warning. Across human space, the activation of Protocol 7 triggered a response that no other species in the galaxy had ever witnessed. Deep in the Sol system, massive shipyards that had been quietly operating for decades suddenly burst into activity. Ships that existed in no official registry began powering up their engines. Crews that didn't appear on any military roster reported to battle stations they had trained for but never expected to use. The truth that humanity had kept hidden for over a century was about to be revealed. While other species saw humans as young, Eager colonists spreading across the galaxy with primitive technology and boundless optimism, they had never suspected the darker truth. Every human colony, every exploration vessel, every seemingly peaceful settlement was connected to a vast network that had been designed for one purpose: to ensure humanity's survival at any cost. Dr. Zafira's medical frigate was still hours away from colony ship Harmony when her sensors detected something that made her question everything she thought she knew about humanity. Emerging from hyperspace around her position were ships unlike anything in her extensive database of galactic vessels. They were massive, clearly military in design, and their energy signatures suggested technology far more advanced than what humans were supposed to possess. This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Vessel Retribution. Dr. Keth, we appreciate your medical assistance, but this situation is now under military jurisdiction. Zafira stared at the massive warship that had materialized beside her small medical frigate. It dwarfed her vessel by orders of magnitude, and according to her sensors, it carried enough firepower to level a small moon. But what truly shocked her was the name, Admiral Chen, the same family name as the captain of colony ship Harmony. Admiral, I don't understand. This is a medical emergency. Colony ship Harmony requested medical assistance. Negative, Doctor. Analysis of the transmitted data confirms this is a biological weapons attack against human civilians. Earth Defense Protocol 7 is now in effect. Please maintain your current course and prepare to provide medical support to survivors once we've neutralized the threat. As if summoned by the Admiral's words, space around them began to fill with more human warships. Not the small, lightly armed vessels that humanity typically displayed to the galactic community, but massive dreadnoughts, carrier vessels bristling with fighter craft, and ships of designs that seemed decades ahead of known human technology. Zafira realized with growing horror that humanity had been hiding their true capabilities for over 2 centuries. While the galaxy saw them as enthusiastic newcomers, they had been quietly building one of the most powerful military forces in known space. But the question that terrified her most was simple. If humans could build ships like these, what else had they been hiding? The answer to that question was about to reshape the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Because the hegemony's carefully planned biological attack had awakened something that would make them regret ever threatening human lives. They had asked for medical help from their human victims, but instead of doctors and medicine, they were about to receive something far more devastating. They were about to meet the true face of humanity and learn why a species that could build ships capable of cracking planets might choose to colonize peacefully. It wasn't because they lacked the power to take what they wanted. It was because they had learned the terrible cost of that power, and they had hoped never to use it again. But hope, as the hegemony was about to discover, was a luxury that humanity could no longer afford. Admiral Chen's fleet moved with precision that spoke of countless hours of training in scenarios the galactic community never knew existed. The massive dreadnought Retribution positioned itself between colony ship Harmony and the nearest star system, while smaller vessels formed a protective perimeter. Dr. Zafira watched from her medical frigate as human military technology deployed in ways that challenged everything she thought she knew about physics. "Doctor, we're reading massive energy buildups across the human fleet," reported her sensor operator, voice tight with anxiety. "These power signatures are off our scales. What are they planning?" Before Zafira could respond, Admiral Chen's voice filled the communication channels again, but this time it wasn't directed at her medical team. Instead, it was broadcasting on emergency frequencies across the galaxy. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen, Earth Defense Command, to all Galactic Council members and their military forces. Human civilians aboard colony ship Harmony have been subjected to biological weapons attack. Analysis confirms this pathogen was engineered specifically to target human genetic markers. Earth Defense Protocol 7 is now active. Any vessels approaching human space without authorization will be considered hostile. The implications of this announcement sent shockwaves across the galaxy within minutes. Protocol 7 was unknown to galactic databases, but the way Admiral Chen spoke about it suggested something that had been planned for decades. More disturbing was the casual mention of Earth Defense Command, an organization that didn't appear in any official human governmental structure. On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Chen studied tactical displays that showed the true scope of human military preparation. Hidden bases across 36 star systems were powering up massive sensor arrays that had been disguised as mining operations for over a century. Ships that had posed as cargo haulers were revealing themselves as advanced reconnaissance vessels. Most shocking of all, weapons platforms that had been thought to be simple communication relays began charging systems capable of destroying entire fleets. "Admiral, we have confirmation," reported her intelligence officer, Commander Torres. "The biological agent originated from Croton Prime. We've tracked the transmission vectors and identified 3 other colonies that are scheduled for simultaneous attacks within the next 18 hours. Chen's jaw tightened. Croton Prime was the headquarters of the Saurian Empire, one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. If they were behind this attack, it meant the threat to humanity was far greater than a single colony ship. "Options?" she asked her tactical team. "We can deploy countermeasures to the threatened colonies," suggested Commander Park, her weapons specialist. "Our medical corps has been developing broad-spectrum biological warfare countermeasures for decades. We can neutralize the threat before it spreads." "That's the defensive approach," Chen replied, her voice carrying undertones that made several bridge officers shift uncomfortably. "What about eliminating the source?" The bridge fell silent. What the Admiral was suggesting went far beyond defending human colonies. She was talking about taking military action against one of the galaxy's established powers, an act that would fundamentally alter the balance of power that had existed for centuries. "Admiral," Commander Torres said carefully, "a direct assault on Croton Prime would require—" He paused, checking his calculations. "Approximately 40% of our deep space fleet assets. And our chances of success? Based on current intelligence estimates of Saurian defensive capabilities?" Torres smiled grimly. 97% success probability within 72 hours. Dr. Zafira, still monitoring human communications from her medical frigate, felt her blood run cold at these casual discussions of overwhelming military superiority. The Saurian Empire commanded thousands of worlds and maintained one of the largest space fleets in the galaxy. The fact that humans could speak of defeating them with such confidence suggested military capabilities that dwarfed anything the Galactic Council had imagined. Meanwhile, deep within colony ship Harmony, Captain Sarah Chen fought a desperate battle against time and terror. The biological weapon was claiming lives faster than her medical team could treat the infected, but she had received word that her sister's fleet was implementing measures that went far beyond simple medical assistance. "Captain, we're receiving new transmissions from the human fleet," reported Lieutenant Park. "They're requesting permission to deploy experimental medical countermeasures." "What kind of countermeasures?" "According to their specifications, they have nanobiological systems that can neutralize the pathogen at the cellular level. But deployment requires—" Park hesitated, checking the data again. "They need to flood our entire ship with microscopic machines." The captain stared at the medical data flowing across her screens. The human fleet was offering technology that was decades ahead of anything she had ever seen. Nanobiological systems were theoretical concepts in human medical science, yet her sister's fleet had them ready for immediate deployment. "Do it," she ordered. "At this point, we have nothing left to lose." What happened next would be studied by xenobiologists for generations. The human fleet deployed clouds of microscopic machines that infiltrated colony ship Harmony through its air recycling systems. Within hours, the machines had located and neutralized every trace of the biological weapon, simultaneously repairing cellular damage in infected colonists and providing targeted medical treatment that surpassed the capabilities of most galactic medical facilities. But the true shock came when Dr. Zephyra's medical team analyzed samples of the nanobiological systems. The technology wasn't just advanced, it was revolutionary in ways that suggested human medical science had been developing in secret for centuries. "Doctor," called her chief researcher, "these nanomachines incorporate technologies that shouldn't exist. They're using quantum processing systems to analyze genetic structures at the subatomic level. This isn't just ahead of our medical technology, it's ahead of our theoretical physics." Zephyra realized that humanity's deception went far deeper than hidden warships. They had been concealing scientific advances that could benefit every species in the galaxy, yet they had kept these discoveries secret while maintaining the appearance of being primitive newcomers. On Croton Prime, General Kratek watched his carefully planned operation collapse in real time. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy as human military forces revealed themselves with devastating efficiency. Cargo ships transformed into destroyer escorts. Mining platforms deployed weapon systems that outclassed anything in the Saurian arsenal. Most alarming of all, massive human battle stations began emerging from what had been thought to be asteroid fields. "General, our intelligence estimates were completely wrong," reported Dr. Nexus Vale, his voice shaking. "Human military capabilities exceed our projections by at least 3 orders of magnitude." Kratek studied the tactical displays showing human fleet movements across dozens of star systems. They weren't just responding to the biological attack. They were positioning forces to strike at hegemony assets across the entire outer rim. The speed and coordination of their deployment suggested planning that went back decades. "How many ships do they have?" he demanded. "Sir, we're still receiving new contacts. Our current count is over 4,000 vessels of destroyer class or larger, but the numbers keep increasing. They seem to have been hiding ships in every star system they've colonized." The truth was even more shocking than Kratek realized. For over 2 centuries, every human colony ship had carried more than settlers and supplies. Hidden within their cargo holds were the components for military bases, weapons platforms, and ship construction facilities. What the galaxy saw as peaceful colonization had actually been the largest military buildup in galactic history. "General, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet," reported his communications officer. "They're demanding our complete surrender." "Impossible. The Saurian Empire has never surrendered to anyone." "Sir, you should see what they're sending along with their demands." The main display activated, showing tactical projections that made Kratek's reptilian blood run cold. The humans hadn't just revealed their hidden fleet, they were demonstrating capabilities that bordered on the impossible. Ships that could fold space-time to appear instantly anywhere in the galaxy. Weapons that could destabilize stars. Defensive shields that could deflect planet-killing asteroids. But the most terrifying display came when they showed what they called a defensive response to biological warfare. A single human vessel had positioned itself near an uninhabited star system and fired a weapon that caused the system's star to go supernova in a controlled burst that vaporized everything within 6 billion kilometers. "This is Admiral Harrison, Earth Defense Command, to General Kratek and the Hegemony leadership. You attempted to commit genocide against human civilians using biological weapons. This aggression cannot and will not be tolerated. You have 6 standard hours to surrender unconditionally and submit to galactic justice. Failure to comply will result in the complete elimination of all hegemony military assets." Kratek realized that his people had made a catastrophic error. They had seen humanity's peaceful expansion and mistaken it for weakness. They had failed to understand that a species capable of building interstellar colonies might have very good reasons for avoiding conflict, not because they lacked the power to fight, but because they possessed power so devastating that using it would fundamentally change the nature of galactic civilization. Back aboard the Retribution, Admiral Chen received reports that the nanobiological countermeasures had successfully saved every colonist aboard colony ship Harmony. The biological weapon had been completely neutralized, and the affected colonists were recovering rapidly. But Chen knew this was only the beginning. "Admiral, we've detected similar biological agents being prepared for deployment against 7 other human colonies," reported Commander Torres. "The hegemony has sleeper cells positioned across our space." "Then we finish this before they can deploy," Chen replied. "Send the authorization codes to all fleet commanders, full deployment authorization. Show them what happens when someone threatens our families." Dr. Zephyra watched in fascination and growing alarm as the human fleet began to reveal the true scope of their military capabilities. Ships that had seemed impossibly advanced were joined by vessels that defied her understanding of technology entirely. She realized that humanity hadn't just been hiding warships. They had been concealing scientific advances that could revolutionize galactic civilization. But as she studied the displays showing human fleet positions, one thought kept recurring. If humans possessed technology this advanced, why had they chosen to expand peacefully? What had taught them to hide power that could have allowed them to conquer the galaxy decades ago? The answer, she was beginning to suspect, lay in humanity's own history. A species that could build weapons capable of destroying star systems had probably learned the terrible cost of such power. Their peaceful expansion wasn't evidence of weakness. It was evidence of wisdom earned through experiences too terrible to repeat. But now, faced with genocide against their colonies, humanity was being forced to reveal weapons they had hoped never to use again. The hegemony had awakened something that the rest of the galaxy was about to discover had been sleeping by choice, not necessity. The 6-hour deadline given to the hegemony passed without a response, though General Kratek had spent every minute desperately trying to contact other galactic powers for support. What he discovered was that humanity's revelation had sent shockwaves throughout the entire galactic community. Species that had considered themselves major powers were re-evaluating every interaction they had ever had with human colonies. The Rigelian Assembly, known for their strategic cunning, had immediately declared neutrality and opened emergency diplomatic channels with Earth Defense Command. The Altarian Medical Council had gone further, formally apologizing for not detecting the biological weapon earlier and offering full medical cooperation with human forces. Most telling of all was the response from the ancient Vorthak Empire, whose civilization predated most others by millennia. Their cryptic message to the Galactic Council simply read, "The sleeping giant has awakened. We remember the warnings from the deep archives. Recommend immediate diplomatic accommodation with human leadership." Admiral Chen watched the countdown timer reach 0 from the bridge of the Retribution. Around her, battle stations hummed with energy as weapons systems that had never been used in combat prepared for their first deployment. But she felt no satisfaction at the prospect of using humanity's hidden arsenal. These weapons represented the darkest chapters of human history. Technologies developed during conflicts so terrible that her species had sworn never to fight such wars again. "Admiral, still no response from Kratek," reported Commander Torres. "However, we're detecting massive fleet movements throughout hegemony space. They appear to be mobilizing everything they have." Chen nodded grimly. "They're choosing the hard way. All fleet commanders execute Option Omega, full spectrum deployment authorized. Show them why humanity chose peace." What happened next would be remembered as the shortest war in galactic history. Human ships that had posed as merchant vessels for decades revealed themselves as advanced combat platforms. Hidden bases throughout human space activated weapons systems that had been carefully disguised as mining equipment or communication arrays. But the true shock came when humanity deployed weapons that seemed to operate outside the known laws of physics. Ships that could phase in and out of normal space-time, making them untouchable by conventional weapons. Energy beams that traveled through hyperspace, striking targets light years away with pinpoint accuracy. Most devastating of all, devices that could manipulate gravity itself, crushing entire fleets by creating artificial black holes. Dr. Zafira found herself in the unique position of witnessing humanity's military deployment while maintaining her medical frigate's status as a neutral observer. What she saw challenged everything she thought she knew about the limitations of technology and warfare. "Doctor, we're reading weapons signatures that shouldn't be possible," reported her sensor operator. "The humans are using controlled gravitational distortions as weapons. They're literally crushing enemy ships by increasing local gravity to thousands of times normal." "How is that possible?" Zafira asked, though she suspected the answer would terrify her. "According to our analysis, they've somehow learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. This isn't just advanced technology. This is rewriting the basic rules of physics." As if to demonstrate this point, a massive saurian dreadnought that had been approaching human positions simply vanished. Not destroyed by explosion or energy beam, but literally ceased to exist, as if it had been deleted from reality itself. "What happened to that ship?" Zafira whispered. Her science officer's voice shook as he replied. "According to our sensors, it was displaced outside normal space-time. The humans somehow moved it into a parallel dimension where it can never return." On Croton Prime, General Kratek watched his empire's military might being systematically dismantled by weapons that seemed more like magic than technology. Entire fleets were disappearing. Space stations were being crushed by artificial gravity wells, and most terrifying of all, some human weapons appeared to be operating backward through time, destroying ships before they even entered combat. "General, we've lost contact with 90% of our forces," reported his aide, voice hollow with shock. "Our intelligence estimates weren't just wrong, they were completely meaningless. The humans aren't fighting with advanced technology. They're fighting with forces that operate outside our understanding of reality." Kratek stared at the tactical displays, showing the complete collapse of hegemony forces. What had been planned as a simple genocide against primitive human colonies had become a demonstration of power so overwhelming that it redefined what was possible in warfare. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet," his communications officer reported. Admiral Harrison's voice filled the command center, carrying the weight of absolute authority. "General Kratek, your forces have been neutralized without the loss of a single human life. Your weapons have been removed from this dimension. Your ships have been relocated to uninhabited space where they can do no harm. This is your final opportunity to surrender before we resort to more permanent solutions." Kratek finally understood the true scope of his mistake. Humanity didn't just possess advanced weapons. They had transcended the normal limitations of warfare itself. They could remove threats from existence, manipulate time and space, and apparently do all of this without causing actual death to their enemies. But perhaps most terrifying of all was the realization that humanity had possessed these capabilities for decades, or possibly centuries, and had chosen never to use them. They had endured insults, territorial disputes, and even occasional attacks while keeping their true power hidden. "What do you want?" Kratek asked, his pride finally broken. "Justice," Admiral Harrison replied simply. "Complete disclosure of all hegemony biological weapons programs, surrender of all research facilities and personnel involved in developing weapons of mass destruction, reparations to all affected human colonies, and most importantly, a guarantee that no species will ever again attempt to commit genocide against human civilians." The terms were harsh but fair, and Kratek realized he had no choice but to accept. The alternative was facing weapons that could apparently remove entire civilizations from existence. Meanwhile, aboard colony ship Harmony, Captain Sarah Chen was receiving reports that seemed impossible. Every colonist who had been infected with the biological weapon was not just recovering, they were emerging healthier than before the attack. The human nanobiological systems hadn't just neutralized the pathogen, they had optimized cellular function throughout the entire colony population. "Captain, we're also receiving some interesting reports from our medical bay," reported Lieutenant Park. "The nanomachines didn't just treat the infected colonists. They seem to have provided genetic improvements that will make our entire population immune to most known diseases." Chen stared at the medical data. Humanity's secret technology hadn't just saved her colonists. It had made them stronger. She was beginning to understand that her sister's fleet represented not just military power, but scientific advances that could transform galactic civilization. Dr. Zafira was reaching similar conclusions from her analysis of the nanobiological systems. "These machines aren't just medical devices," she told her research team. "They're demonstrating capabilities that suggest humanity has solved problems we didn't even know existed. They've created technology that can literally rewrite biology at the quantum level." As news of humanity's overwhelming military victory spread throughout the galaxy, the reactions varied dramatically. Some species expressed terror at the revelation of such advanced weapons. Others, particularly those who had been oppressed by the older galactic powers, began viewing humanity as potential liberators. But the most significant response came from the Galactic Council itself. In an emergency session, they voted to offer humanity full membership in the Council's ruling body, a position that had been reserved for civilizations with at least 1,000 years of spacefaring history. Admiral Chen received the Council's offer while overseeing the final stages of hegemony surrender. She studied the diplomatic communication carefully before composing her response. "The Galactic Council's offer is appreciated," she replied, "but humanity's position remains unchanged. We seek peaceful coexistence, not dominance. Our military capabilities were revealed only to protect our civilians from genocide. We hope they will never need to be deployed again." This response triggered perhaps the most significant shift in galactic politics in millennia. Humanity had demonstrated the power to dominate the galaxy, but had explicitly rejected the opportunity to do so. Instead, they were offering to share their advanced medical technology with any species that committed to peaceful cooperation. Dr. Zafira found herself appointed as the primary liaison between the Altarian Medical Council and humanity's new medical corps. In her first meeting with human doctors, she was shocked to discover the true scope of their scientific advances. "Doctor, we've been developing these technologies for over 3 centuries, explained Dr. Elizabeth Harrison, Admiral Harrison's sister and head of human medical research. "Our species learned very early that advanced technology could be used for creation or destruction. We chose creation, but we never forgot the lessons of destruction." "What lessons?" Zafira asked. "That power without wisdom leads to catastrophe," Dr. Harrison replied. "Our early history was filled with wars that nearly destroyed our species. We learned to hide our capabilities not from weakness, but from the knowledge that revealing them would change the nature of galactic civilization." Zafira began to understand why humanity had chosen such an unusual path. They possessed technology that could revolutionize medicine, engineering, even the fundamental understanding of physics. But they also understood that releasing such advances too quickly could destabilize entire civilizations. "Now that your secret is revealed, what happens next?" Zafira asked. "Now we work together," Dr. Harrison smiled. "Humanity has spent centuries developing technologies in isolation. We've reached the limits of what we can achieve alone. It's time to share our knowledge and learn from other species." The aftermath of what galactic historians would call the hegemony hour reshaped interstellar civilization in ways that continued for generations. Humanity's revelation of their hidden capabilities forced a complete reevaluation of galactic power structures, but their choice to use that power for protection rather than conquest established new principles for interstellar relations. The biological weapons research facilities discovered on hegemony worlds were converted into medical research centers, jointly operated by human and galactic scientists. The technologies that humanity shared revolutionized medicine, engineering, and even space travel throughout the galaxy. But perhaps most importantly, humanity's example demonstrated that a species could possess overwhelming military power while choosing to use it only for defense. This concept, power restrained by wisdom, became the foundation for a new era of galactic cooperation. Dr. A. Zephyra often reflected on the events that had brought her into contact with humanity's hidden nature. A simple medical emergency call had revealed one of the most significant secrets in galactic history. But as she worked alongside human scientists to develop new medical technologies that would benefit all species, she realized that the true revelation wasn't humanity's advanced weapons. It was their advanced wisdom, the understanding that true strength came not from the power to destroy, but from the choice to protect and heal instead. The galaxy had asked for medical help, and while humanity had responded with warships, those warships had ultimately delivered something far more valuable: hope for a future where advanced technology would be used to build rather than destroy. In the end, the hegemony's attempt to commit genocide against human colonies had backfired completely. Instead of eliminating a perceived threat, they had revealed humanity as the galactic community's greatest potential ally, a species with the power to dominate, but the wisdom to cooperate instead.